Hello and welcome to Outsiders Weather and the Skeptics Ice Age Watch, where I'm told Brisbane has just had one of its coldest days on record, and if you were in Sydney yesterday, it felt like the Antarctic. Global warming, obviously. There has been a spate of agitated lovies in the media recently telling us that Australia's beloved beaches are under threat of disappearing thanks to climate change and sea level rise. Half the world's beaches could vanish, claims SBS, paid for by your taxes. The Sydney Morning Herald, the ABC, the Guardian and the Age all jumped on the same story. More than 12,000 kilometres of Australia's sandy beaches are threatened by coastal erosion by the end of the century, with greater losses predicted if greenhouse gas emissions remain high. And as proof, they claim, a substantial proportion of the world's sandy coastline is already eroding. But are they right? No. This is deception by omission. Yes, a proportion of the world's beaches are eroding, but an even bigger proportion are growing, not shrinking, and an even larger proportion are completely stable. Researchers from Delft University in 2018 published a report that studied 50,000 sandy beaches with millions of satellite images from over a 35-year period. They concluded that while 24% of the world's sandy beaches are eroding, a greater number, 27%, are accreting, meaning they're getting bigger and sandier, and 48%, nearly half, are stable. They're the same. No change there. The satellite data proves 3/4 of the world's beaches are either growing in size or staying the same. But that didn't stop the lovies using 3 specific Australian beaches to try and illustrate rising sea levels thanks to climate change. But in each case, they did not tell the full story. Exhibit 1. Australia's coastline has already seen significant areas of retreat in recent years, such as at Inverloch in Victoria, wrote one excited journalist. But Inverloch is particularly susceptible to erosion thanks to southerly winds and storm surges, particularly in winter. Indeed, Inverloch suffered worse erosion back in 1979, 1977, and all the way back in 1962, long before global warming. Exhibit 2. The lovies' favourite catastrophic climate change location, Sydney's much maligned Collaroy Beach. The truth is, as northern beaches old-timers know only too well, Collaroy Beach has been doing the exact same thing for over a century. Here's the recent damage. Here's the damage in exactly the same spot 50 years earlier in 1966, and here it was nearly 50 years before that. Same beach, same damage, same erosion, and locals recall many other such events long before global warming. Exhibit number 3. Stockton Beach near Newcastle. Gasp, shock, horror. All the sand has vanished. Well, yes, Stockton Beach has been eroding as far back as 1908 and for a sustained period in the 1940s, when the dressing shed and Dalby Oval were washed away. Why? Mainly thanks to the famous Nobby's Headland in Newcastle, which used to be Nobby's Island. Back in 1818, Governor Macquarie began building the first breakwater to link the island to the mainland. What is today's Nobby's famous surfing beach used to be open water. But you can't build one new beach without damaging an old one. And today, the breakwaters of the Hunter River interrupt the flow and northward drift of currents and sand, thereby starving Stockton Beach of around 41,000 cubic metres of sand every single year. But at least the surfers at Nobby's are happy.
Well, I got my beach towel and I'm heading down to the surf. Gonna see my Johnny, gonna meet him down at the surf. We're gonna shoot the breakers, gonna stomp in the sand. A look in his eyes while he holds my hand. 'Cause he's my blonde-headed stomping one real gun surfer boy. Yeah, 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 yeah.
So, are half our beaches set to disappear thanks to catastrophic rising sea levels caused by global warming? Well, not according to the measurements at Fort Denison in Sydney Harbour, which is situated with some irony just around the corner from climate-lovey Malcolm Turnbull's harbourside mansion. Here's what it looks like now, and here's what it looked like back in 1857. Spot the difference? No, neither can I. And for the boffins, here are the tide gauges from Fort Denison, kept with military precision for 140 years, which show a rise of about 3 inches in over a century. And indeed, in many years, the mean average was higher, back in 1908, for instance, than it is now. But now, let's check out Surf City. But here's a group of Extinction Rebellion activists warning about the disasters of our rising oceans, which clearly threaten to engulf the famous Bondi Beach. I mean, already you can see how high the oceans have risen since the global warming scare began in 1989, or since the suffragettes in 1909, or back all the way to the late 1880s. As Debbie Harry once famously said, "The tide is high, but I'm holding on." And that's it for Outsiders Weather and the Skeptics Tidal Watch.